She thought she could intimidate him. Until his mother arrived. And let's just say she wasn't ready. The sun hung high over Shreveport, Louisiana, turning the neighborhood pool into an oasis in the middle of a scorching summer afternoon. Kids splashed, parents lounged under umbrellas, and the faint sound of a lifeguard's whistle echoed every now and then. Jordan wasn't thinking about politics, race, or social issues. He was just a 16-year-old kid trying to escape the heat. His mum had been on his case about balancing his summer with fun, not just academics and volunteer work. So for once, he let himself take a break. He set his towel down on a plastic chair, adjusted his goggles, and made his way to the deep end. His neighborhood was a mix of old and new families, some who had been there for decades, and others, like his, who had moved in recently. He'd swum in this pool before, but something felt different today. As he climbed down the ladder, he noticed a pair of eyes on him. An older woman, maybe in her late 60s, sat near the edge in a wide-brimmed sun hat, holding onto the pool railing as if she was surveying her kingdom. Her lips were pursed, her eyes narrow. Jordan had seen that look before. Not curiosity, not concern. Something else. At first, he ignored her. Maybe she was just an observant person. Not everyone staring at you had bad intentions, right? He dunked under the water, letting the coolness wrap around him, muffling the world above. But the moment he resurfaced, he saw her whispering to another woman, her gaze flicking back to him every few seconds. Jordan sighed. He'd lived in plenty of places, seen plenty of people who gave him this same exact look. He'd learned that staying calm was the best response. So he leaned back, floating, closing his eyes. Let it go. Then he heard a voice, sharp, cutting through the summer air. Excuse me, young man. Jordan opened his eyes. The woman stood at the edge of the pool now, arms crossed. The other swimmers had started to quiet down, their laughter fading. Here we go. Are you a resident here? She asked, her tone already loaded. Jordan wiped water from his face and looked up at her. He could answer this in 1,000 different ways. He could give her his address, he could tell her he's been coming here all summer, or he could ask why she assumed he didn't belong. But he already knew where this was going. Still, he kept his voice even. Yeah, I live right down the street. The woman didn't even blink. Oh? Where exactly? And just like that, the air around the pool changed. No more kids screaming, no more parents chatting. The lifeguard, a guy maybe a few years older than Jordan, looked like he wanted to step in. But he didn't. Jordan's grip on the pool ledge tightened. He was used to moments like these, but that didn't mean they didn't sting. But this was just the beginning. Jordan held the woman's gaze, his fingers still gripping the edge of the pool. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down, the quiet stares from people who had been laughing just minutes ago. She wasn't asking because she was curious. She was asking because she didn't believe him. He inhaled slowly before answering. I live on Cedar Lane, 3 blocks down. The woman squinted, like she was trying to recall if she'd ever seen him before. Then she shook her head. I don't think so. I know all the families in this community and I've never seen you. Jordan forced a smile. Well, that's funny, because I've lived here for almost 2 years. A few of the onlookers shifted uncomfortably. They knew where this was going, but no one stepped in. The woman adjusted her sun hat, glancing around as if looking for support. This pool is for residents only. Jordan felt something simmering under his ribs. Annoyance, frustration. No, something deeper. I just told you, I live here. His voice stayed calm, but inside he felt the slow, creeping heat of anger. That's when she said it. Then prove it. The words sliced through the thick, humid air. Jordan blinked, swallowing back the sharp response that was sitting on the tip of his tongue. Prove it? like he was sneaking in, like he had something to hide. A few people murmured from their chairs. A couple at the far end of the pool exchanged glances. But still, no one said anything. Jordan took a slow breath, not because he needed to calm down, but because this was a test. This woman wasn't just challenging whether he lived here. She was challenging his right to exist in this space. Jordan shook his head. "No, I don't have to prove anything to you." The woman's mouth tightened. "Then I'm calling the property manager." She reached into her pool bag and pulled out her phone. Jordan should have been surprised, but he wasn't. He ran through his options. He could ignore her, but she'd keep pushing. He could leave, but that would mean letting her win. He could argue, but people like her never listened. And then, just as the woman pressed her phone screen, she said something that made the air snap. "You people always think you can do whatever you want." Jordan felt everything in his body go still. Someone gasped. A father playing with his daughter in the shallow end pulled her closer. The lifeguard finally straightened up like he was about to intervene. But Jordan was done. He wiped his face, blinked a few times, then climbed out of the pool. Water dripped from his shorts onto the hot pavement as he grabbed his towel. Then calmly, too calmly, he pulled out his phone. He only needed to say one sentence. "Hey, Mom, can you come to the pool?" The woman smirked, like she thought he was bluffing, but she had no idea who was about to step out of that car. The woman crossed her arms, her expression smug as if she had already won. She thought she had the upper hand. Jordan didn't argue. He didn't plead his case. He just stood there, phone in hand, waiting. The other pool-goers were pretending not to watch, but their sideways glances and hushed whispers told a different story. They knew something was coming. The woman put a hand on her hip. "Calling your mom? That's adorable. Maybe she can explain the rules to you." Jordan glanced at her, his face unreadable. Yeah, maybe she can. For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed the woman's face. She hadn't expected him to be this calm. Still, she pressed on. "Look, kid, I don't have a problem with you, but we have rules in this neighborhood, and if you actually live here—" "I do." Jordan cut in, his voice firm. The woman ignored him. "Then you should understand that this pool is private. We can't just let anyone walk in off the street." Anyone. The word hit heavier than it should have. Jordan didn't react, but he knew exactly what she meant. Someone cleared their throat nearby, and for the first time another voice entered the conversation. "He does live here." A man in his mid-40s stood from his chair, adjusting his sunglasses. He was one of the long-time residents. Jordan had seen him at the HOA meetings his mom occasionally forced him to attend. The woman's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" The man shrugged. "I've seen him before. He and his mom moved into the house on Cedar Lane, like he said." For a split second, uncertainty flickered in her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She doubled down. "Well, if that's true, then he should have no problem proving it, should he?" she shot back. Jordan exhaled sharply through his nose. There it was. The thing about people like her, they never back down. Even when they're wrong, they'd rather dig themselves deeper than admit it. The other man sighed. "Come on, Sharon. Just let the kid swim." But Sharon wasn't backing down. She was too far in now. She turned back to Jordan, lifting her chin. "If your mother really lives here, I'd love to speak with her." Jordan checked his phone screen. "Oh, you'll get your chance." Because at that exact moment, the air around the pool shifted. The low hum of an engine rolled in from the parking lot. Heads turned. A sleek black SUV pulled up just beyond the gate, its tires crunching against the pavement. And then, the door swung open. The sound of the SUV door shutting was sharp, deliberate, like the first note in a song that no one was ready for. Jordan didn't move. He didn't need to. All eyes turned to the woman stepping out of the car. Governor Cynthia Lawson. She wasn't in a suit today. She had been working from home, dressed in tailored slacks and a crisp blouse. But power wasn't about the clothes. It was in the way she carried herself. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked toward the pool gate, her movements measured, effortless, unbothered. The murmurs started immediately. A few people sat up straighter. Some whispered to their spouses, others just stared, eyes darting between Jordan and the woman who had just arrived. Jordan watched as the color drained from Sharon's face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked unsure. Cynthia stopped in front of the gate and let her gaze sweep over the pool area, her expression unreadable. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't raising her voice. She didn't have to. Then finally, she turned her attention to the one person who had been loudest all afternoon. "Is there a problem here?" Sharon blinked rapidly, scrambling to adjust her sun hat like it could somehow shield her from the moment. "Oh, Jordan almost laughed. A minute ago, this woman had been so sure. Now, speechless. Cynthia's eyes flickered to her son, then back to Sharon. "My son called me, said there was an issue." Sharon let out a breathy laugh, her voice suddenly several octaves higher. "Oh, no issue. Just a little misunderstanding." Cynthia's expression didn't change. "A misunderstanding?" Sharon nodded too quickly. "Yes, I was just trying to make sure, that the rules were being followed." Cynthia didn't blink. "And what rule exactly was being broken?" Sharon swallowed. Jordan watched it all unfold, arms crossed. He wasn't even mad anymore. This was better than anything he could have said. Sharon looked around as if expecting backup, but the other pool-goers, the ones who had been watching this play out, weren't going to help her. The lifeguard, who had been hesitant earlier, now stood with his arms crossed, clearly not stepping in to save her. The man who had vouched for Jordan raised an eyebrow as if daring her to keep digging. Sharon was alone. Cynthia let the silence drag for a moment longer, then finally tilted her head. "My son tells me you asked him to prove he lives here." Sharon stammered. I just wanted to be sure." Cynthia took a step closer. "Be sure of what?" Jordan saw the exact moment Sharon realized there was no way out. She exhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her chest as if she were the victim. "I was only trying to protect our community. You understand, don't you? We have to be careful." Cynthia gave her a slow, measured nod. "You're right. We do have to be careful. We have to be careful of people who think they have the right to decide who belongs and who doesn't." The tension was so thick it could have cracked the pavement. Sharon opened her mouth one more time, probably to spin some excuse, but Cynthia held up a hand. "Enough." The single word cut through the air like glass. Sharon flinched. Cynthia glanced at Jordan, then put a hand on his shoulder. "He belongs here, and frankly, I'm wondering if you do." And just like that, it was over. Sharon's face turned a shade that could only be described as pure embarrassment. She grabbed her bag, muttered something under her breath, and hurried away. As she left, a couple of people clapped. Someone whispered, "She had that coming." Jordan didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just turned to his mum and said, "Thanks for coming." She squeezed his shoulder. "Always." Sharon practically bolted toward the exit, her sun hat wobbling as she rushed past the pool chairs and out the gate. A few people exchanged looks, some amused, others relieved, but no one stopped her. The moment she disappeared, the silence lingered. Then, the lifeguard, who had been frozen in place the whole time, finally spoke up. So, we all saw that, right?" A few people chuckled, tension breaking just slightly. Someone in the back muttered, "That was insane." But Jordan didn't care about the whispers. He wasn't interested in the small talk that was about to follow, the shocked conversations, the hushed, "Did that really just happen?" from people who had said nothing when it mattered. He just wanted to swim. Jordan exhaled and looked up at his mother. "You didn't have to come all the way down here." Cynthia raised an eyebrow. "You called me." "Yeah, but I didn't expect you to roll up like the Secret Service." A small smile tugged at her lips. "What kind of mother would I be if I let people talk to my son like that?" Jordan shook his head, but he wasn't really annoyed. He was grateful, because she understood. She always had. Cynthia turned her gaze back to the pool. The water, which had been calm moments ago, was now buzzing with quiet energy. People were pretending to go back to their routines, but their eyes kept drifting toward Jordan and his mum, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Cynthia sighed. "You sure you still want to swim?" Jordan looked at the water, at the way the sunlight bounced off the surface. A few kids were already back to splashing in the shallow end. A dad was helping his toddler float. The pool was still his. He glanced back at his mother, shrugged, and smirked. "I mean, I did come here to swim." Cynthia grinned. "Then swim." Jordan dropped his towel onto the chair and walked back toward the deep end. His mum, unbothered as ever, took a seat under an umbrella like she had all the time in the world. As Jordan climbed down the ladder, he felt the shift. People who had been hesitant before were now offering small nods. A mother nearby gave him an apologetic look. A young couple who had been quiet the entire time smiled at him. No one outright said, "I'm sorry," but Jordan could feel it. Maybe next time they wouldn't just watch. He took one last glance at his mum before diving underwater, letting the world above fade into muffled sound. This time, when he resurfaced, no one questioned whether he belonged. The water felt cooler, lighter. Jordan floated on his back for a moment, letting his ears dip beneath the surface. The noise, the whispers, the weight of everything that had just happened, it all faded. For once, he wasn't thinking about proving himself. He wasn't thinking about Sharon or the people who had stayed quiet. He was just existing. When he finally swam to the edge, pulling himself up, his mum was still sitting under the umbrella, watching him with that unreadable expression she always wore when she was proud but didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Jordan grabbed his towel and walked over. "You staying long?" Cynthia smirked. "You think I came all this way just to turn around?" Jordan shook his head. He should have known better. His mother leaned forward slightly, her voice softer now. "You handled yourself well today." Jordan huffed. "Did I? It didn't feel like it." Cynthia tilted her head. "You didn't yell. You didn't argue. You didn't let her define you. And when it mattered, you stood your ground." Jordan sat back, letting the words settle. Maybe that was enough. Cynthia stretched, adjusting her sunglasses. "People like her will always exist. But people like you, the ones who stand firm and refuse to shrink, they make sure those people don't win." Jordan nodded slowly, really letting that sink in. Then his mum smirked. "Now go enjoy your pool, kid." And this time, when Jordan walked back toward the water, he did it without hesitation. Some battles don't need shouting. Some victories come from simply refusing to be erased. If you've ever faced something like this, or seen it happen, don't stay silent. Speak up, stand firm, and never let anyone tell you that you don't belong.